Hello everyone, we're at the beginning of week 4. It's going to be on a single topic called HTML. Most likely we're going to finish most of this lesson today, leaving us on Thursday to give some hints on the HTML weather. So yeah, there's another assignment that I released. It's pretty much the same thing as the previous assignment, except it's going to take it a step further and use HTML. So here, let's actually talk about HTML first before we jump into the material. All right, let's give folks some context on what this is. So HTML stands for Hypertext Markup Language. It's it's kind of how a lot of websites look on the inside. So here I have a link. I have a link right here. Intro to HTML. There's a link right here. It's another language. It's not Python. It's a totally different language that allows us to organize elements within a web page. Right? In particular, we can use that language to describe the structure. Right? We could put elements within elements. Right? So it's pretty much saying HTML is a language that will help us organize how a website looks like. So yeah, I do want to stress that it is not Python. So here, let me show folks some example on what HTML looks like. Let me just go to a random website. Let me think. Let's go to like Wikipedia. So I'm just gonna go to Wikipedia and just look up a random article, like maybe lion. Let's look up lion. Okay, so there we go. I'm on a website, and you can look at the HTML representation of it. Right? A couple ways you can do this on your browser. This depends on if you're in Firefox, Safari, or Google Chrome. But generally, you should be able to right-click it, and then there's a couple buttons. There's one that says Inspect, and then one that says View Page Source. All right, I'm gonna click on both of them. Let me click on View Page Source first. So View Page Source right here. You're gonna be greeted with some dense code. So yeah, you don't really have to know how to read this. If anything, this is just HTML code that represents the website. Right, so I'm going to scroll down. Right, it's a lot of code. So yeah, this is how the website looks like on the inside. So that's kind of what Wikipedia is. You can also go on Inspect right here. So I right-clicked and click Inspect. This will allow us to narrow down on certain elements of the HTML. So here on the bottom, I know it might be hard for folks to read, but it's all good. You don't have to be able to read this. It's pretty much HTML, and whenever I hover over it, it'll kind of tell me what element that I'm looking at. For example, right here, I hovered over P. This is a paragraph, so it's highlighting this whole paragraph right here. And then finally, let me go to another P. Down here, this is another paragraph. So yeah, hopefully people kind of see what's happening. We're just looking at page source. And another cool thing you can do with this stuff, you can save websites. Right? You can actually just download this code and look at it offline. I am online right now. I need internet. It is possible to download this. Right? So you could right-click it and then say, oh, okay, not for me. Oh, okay. There's a button here that says Save Page As. So this is going to save the HTML code. So I'm going to save it, and let me go ahead and save it into a folder. Let me actually make a folder for this because it actually downloads multiple files. So let me make a folder. I'll call it a wiki web page. So I'm making a folder, and I'm just going to save into this folder on my local computer. Okay, cool. So I just downloaded it. If folks are curious what the folder looks like, let me pull it up. There it is. So I just opened up the folder. I downloaded it to here. There's two two things here. There's a file called lion wikipedia.html, and then there's another one. This is a directory. So I just clicked into it, right? This is a folder, this top one. It contains 133 items. Right? This is pretty much the assets, right, of that web page. So I'll click into it. There's a bunch of pictures here, right? Like one asset is a picture of some species, right? So all of these, I literally just downloaded the web page and the assets, right? The graphics and all of that. So more specifically, let me back out of this, right? So we got the directory of assets and we have the HTML. Oh, one cool thing, if you were to, lose internet, you can actually just load this web page back up because I downloaded it. So imagine if I lost internet, I'd be able to just double click this HTML, right? And then it's gonna open up in my browser. And there it is. It's the same exact web page. The difference is this web page is located on my local computer. See on the top right here, on the top address bar, it doesn't say www dot something, right? The prefix is file, right? So I do want to stress that this is not using the internet right now. The browser is loading a file that I have in my computer. So yeah, it's over here. This is the actual one that requires internet. Right? It looks the same. It looks the same. It's just that this one requires internet because there's an HTTPS here, and then this one right here doesn't require internet. Okay, the whole point of this was just to kind of showing what's happening. All I did was download the source code and rendered it myself. So it's some pretty cool stuff. Some really cool stuff. What else? Yeah, a lot of web pages use HTML. Nowadays, a lot of people are just using website builders, like click and drag website builders, but those website builders are really just generating HTML in the background. So here, let me give some more context before jumping into the notebook. So I did download the source code. Right, the source code for this website looks like this right here. Right, this is what I downloaded. I downloaded all this text to my computer. Jupyter Notebook has a cool functionality. It will allow us to render web pages within the notebook. So it's kind of like a wrapper. Here, let me go to the notebook real quick. You don't have to do this as long as you're kind of following along. I'm going to create a brand new notebook just so folks see what I'm saying. So Jupyter Notebook allows us to wrap HTML. It allows us to render it. So I do have to import something. It's I think it's from ipython.display import display. Hold up, I think I have some capitalization errors. Let me double check. See, from ipython display import HTML. So I'm importing a library that will let me render stuff. In particular, IPython stands for Interactive Python. This is not really classic Python. Interactive Python is kind of like some extra things you can do within notebooks. Okay, so let me just run this real quick. Okay, let me go ahead and declare a string. So I'm going to declare a string. I'm just going to call it my HTML. Here, let me zoom in a bit. So I'll call it my HTML. I'm going to set it equal to an empty string, an empty multi-line string. Right, so for folks who were here last week, right, this is a multi-line string. There's a triple quotes, meaning we can put multiple lines in within it. The reason why I made it multi-line string is because I'm planning on copying all of this code and pasting it into this string. So let me go ahead and paste it. It's going to be really large. So pasted, there it is. I just pasted all of the HTML. So let me go all the way to the bottom. It's going to take me a while. Yeah, see, I copy and pasted a lot. Okay, so the bottom of the cell right here. Cool, so this is the end of the string declaration. Right, all I did was I set my HTML equal to this whole multi-line string. We can use a function that we imported. Right, we did import a library that will allow us to use my HTML. Right, so we do have a string called this. I can go ahead and convert this into something called an HTML object, and then this will allow us to pass it into a display function. So there's a display function. It's kind of like a fancy print, but it's going to be able to render HTML. So here, let me go ahead and run this. I'll press play, and okay, I got some warnings. That's okay. Warnings mean that things are fine, but there's possibly things going wrong. Let's see. Oh, okay, this web page didn't come out looking nice. So yeah, it looks like it's making an attempt to render the web page. So let me see. Subspecies. Okay, it just doesn't look exactly like Wikipedia, but you can see that the contents are still there. It's just not as formatted nicely. The reason why it's not as formatted nicely is probably because I didn't. This doesn't include a lot of things. Like I'm not really going to jump into it, but this code doesn't include something called CSS. Right, CSS stands for Cascading Style Sheets. And when I pasted the HTML code, it doesn't give us CSS. But basically, CSS is a separate file that kind of defines the theme. So yeah, that's kind of why it's not looking as nice. But if I were to do a simpler website, it should render a little more fine. So here, let me erase all of this. Let me erase all this. Let me look for a simpler website to render. Just because Wikipedia, if you look at the source, there's probably a lot of dependencies that I don't have in Jupyter. So here, let me think of a simpler website. Oh, you know what? Canvas. Canvas is kind of arguably simple. So here, I'm in the Canvas. Let me go ahead and look at the source. Right, so I'm going to view the page source, and there is all of the code right here. Right, let me go ahead and copy and paste. So copy, and then paste right here. Right, I'm going to paste it into this HTML string. So boom, pasted. And then let me go to the bottom and go ahead and display it. So here, okay, I do need to convert the string into an HTML object. I'll talk more on this later. So yeah, there's a function called HTML. This comes from the library we downloaded, that we imported. And then I'm going to display this whole thing. So display. Okay, let me test it. So press play. Let's see how it looks. Okay, it's looking a little better. So yeah, this is our website, our Canvas website. There's some warnings here. It's warnings aren't errors. Okay, but yeah, see, this is pretty much our canvas, right? We rendered the canvas into our notebook. It's not exactly formatted correctly. Once again, it's because the HTML string doesn't include the another file. See, and here's my calendar. All right, here's my calendar. We are here. Okay. Cool. There's some elements in here too that I'd like to point out where we're going to see some of these elements in class. So later on, we'll learn about something called a header. Right? A header is a fancy way of saying title. So this is a title right here. Right? And then underneath it is a paragraph. It might seem weird that I'm saying this, but these are actual HTML elements that we'll talk about later. Okay, and here's another header. Right? This is a smaller header. It's like a subtitle. Right? Okay, and then here we go. All right, here's another big header, grading. And then underneath it, we have a table element. We'll see what this is later. We're actually going to code a table element later. Okay. And yeah, if you're curious, you can look at the code over here. It's kind of hard to read though, so we'll jump into this today. So let me jump into, let me see some of this. Let me look at this code real quick. Okay, you know what? Let's keep it simple. I'm gonna go away from this. I don't want to introduce too much at once. Okay, so let's see. HTML. People kind of getting an idea of what this is. Right, HTML is not Python. We're just happening to use Python to render HTML. Yeah, the notebooks has the Jupyter notebook has access to IPython, which is interactive Python. It's not classic Python, but it's going to let us render some stuff. Okay, let's go ahead and write our first HTML string. So generally, here let me do one more intro, just so people kind of see what's going on. Generally, HTML, you'll see it look like in this format. The format usually has something called a tag. Tags are these things right here, right, with the arrows. Each tag typically has a ending tag. For example, the ending one for here is here, right? And then the body, right, the ending one for this is over here, right? And then another one, H1, H1, the ending tag is here, and then this P tag, right? P is short for paragraph, is here. Right, so that's typically what it looks like. And oh, it looks like they have a try it yourself. So that this is a website's tool that lets you render HTML. So all of this becomes this over here. That's the representation. Okay, so let's jump into some of this stuff. There's a lot to learn in HTML, by the way. There's so much. I have like a really large book in my office on HTML. But here's a website that kind of talks about different elements we can have. There's a lot of things, right? There's so many different tags. We'll talk about tags later. But looking on the left side, do folks kind of see how dense this is? Right? There's so many things we can do. So many. We're only going to cover the bare minimum. Right? We're only going to cover just enough to know how to format a bit of text, maybe make a table. So we're not going to introduce too many types of elements. But if you were interested, you could look at this stuff. Okay, so back to the notebook. I think people will find this fun. I'm talking to the folks who might be interested in having more control over website design, right? Like maybe you're designing a website and the website builder isn't letting you do some things. So you might have to edit raw HTML. Right? So this notebook will let you have more control over designing web pages. Okay. Okay, so the first tag that we'll see, it's called a header tag. Right? A header tag is short for, it's a fancy word for title. So let me go ahead and declare a variable. Right? You can call it whatever you want. I'm just going to call it my HTML, and I'm going to assign it a string. I'm going to assign it a string. I'm just going to say hello world. But then on both sides of it, I'm going to enclose it in an H tag, a header tag. Right? So H1 over here, and then at the very end, H1 right here. Okay. So yeah, if you're H1, the one here just means it's a top level, meaning it's the biggest. It's like the biggest header we can have. It's like saying chapter, right? And then within chapters there are sections, and then within sections there are subsections. So that's kind of the layers I'm talking about. The one is the top layer. Okay, so I just declared a string. We can convert this string into an HTML object. So we did import some tools for that. there's a function called HTML, and whatever we put in it, a string, right? My HTML. This whole thing is going to evaluate to a object. We'll talk about objects later, but it's pretty much converting this into a type that we can display nicely. Okay. So let me go ahead and display this. So, and then, oh, we got name HTML is not defined. This probably means we didn't run the first cell. So I should probably rerun this. It does say number 1 here, but that's probably because it was left there. So let me press play here. Okay, so press play there, and then I gotta scroll up, my bad. Cool, see what it did, right? It's the display function is like a fancy print statement, but the input can be an object, right? Not just a string, not just a variable, right? Display is pretty fancy stuff. Okay, so all we did so far was declare a header. If folks wanted to look at the primary documentation for this, you could look at some of these. You could scroll up, and I have some links. Right, there's a link to HTML elements. Let me click on this. So HTML elements. Yeah, H1 stands for header. Let me click on here on the left, headings. All right, so there's many layers to it. If the number pretty much define its size. Like see, 1 is large, and then 2 is smaller. Right? Think of these as subsections within subsections. That's what you can think of them as. Okay. Cool. As we write larger HTML code, it's arguably going to be easier to read if we use multi-line strings. So multi-line strings use triple quotes. So I'm going to use triple quotes, meaning that I can represent the string on multiple lines. And it's going to arguably make things easier to read. So for the reason why is because you can kind of visualize what's within what, right? Like if I were to represent it as here, right, I can see hello world is between these two things. It might seem like it doesn't make a difference right now, but it's going to make a difference, right? Because you guys saw the large source file, right? Here, so this is the Wikipedia. This is how it's represented. Right? Can people kind of see the formatting? Right? The formatting is there are indents, right? There are things within things. So yeah, as you'll see later, this format will make things a little easier to read. So this is going to give us the same output, right? In HTML, the white space actually doesn't matter. Yeah, this is HTML. So I'm not talking about Python. This is an HTML string. So you really don't need these. Okay. Any questions so far? Okay, cool. Let's do something a little fancier, like coloring text. So let me just declare this as a variable instead. Here, let's hard code a couple variables first. I'll hard code a couple strings. Color text equal to hello world. The point of this cell is to show us how we can use F strings to render HTML. And I'm going to kind of deviate away from this example. Let me do the same pattern. My HTML is equal to, I'm going to set it equal to, I'm going to prepare a multi-line string. Okay, so I'm preparing a multi-line string, triple quotes. Okay. I'm going to use something called a span tag. I'll explain what this is later. So since it's a good idea to close things right away, right, since I opened a span tag, there's typically an ending one too, a closing tag. So I'm going to go ahead and close it right away. Right, it uses the / span. Okay. Basically, this is like saying a piece of the text So here, I could click on here. Let me see if there's a span. Okay, I'm not sure where it's at. It's in one of these links. But yeah, a span is like saying a piece of the text, right? In this case, the piece is going to be in here. So let me put something in here. Like, let me interpolate this variable into the span. All right, so interpolate means put the value of this variable into here. And if you might remember from last week, we can use an F string to do that. Right? If I put an F before this triple quote, right, the whole thing becomes an F string, meaning we can put variables into here, right, as long as we have these curly braces. So I put these curly braces here, and I'm going to put text in here. People see what's happening. So the value of text will go into here because this is a formatted string. Okay, let's take this step by step. Let me go ahead and render this first. All right, let me take this string, convert it to an HTML object. Okay, and then pass that object into a display function. Okay, let me go ahead and run it, see what it looks like. All right, see, that's all it says. This says hello world. This is just a fancy print statement for hello world. But these tags will allow us to style things. Right? We have power to upgrade things. We can set colors. Right? So one way we can set a color is by adding an attribute into this tag. Right? So there's an attribute called style. Let me see if it's on this website. Yeah, so you could look at attributes right here. If you want to dive down, right, you can totally dive in this. It's not too necessary. But if you did want to look into it, it's pretty much going to talk about an attribute called style. In this case, I'm going to define style as equal to some string. So I just did some two quotes, right? And then inside of here, I'm going to define a color style. So color, and then you know what? I'm just going to hard code red for now. So I'm just going to hard code red. Okay, so once again, everything within these quotes is not Python. Right? This is HTML. So we just happen to be using the Jupyter Notebook Python to render this. Okay, so let me test this. Let me press play, and there we go. Right, we see it is red. That's because we modified the tag, meaning that this piece of text will become red. Okay, this is kind of hard coded. It would be. You'll see why this is useful later in the next assignment. So instead of having red here, I'm just going to interpolate this variable. Right? We did define a variable called green, called color, I mean. So we could remove this and put in whatever value this is. All right, people kind of seeing what I mean. So then when I render it, now it's green. Okay. So this is the same example as above here. In my opinion, this is easier to read. I think folks might agree too that this is easier to read. And that's because we can see all of the tags and what's inside of it. If anything, I forgot one more thing. There's another tag. It's called a bold. All right, let me look at this website real quick. So in the basics, there's elements. Okay, this is a pretty dense. This is a pretty dense documentation, but somewhere in there, there's something called a B tag, which is short for bold. So I can actually encase this with bold, right? On both sides, let me open something here and then close something. Right? In this case, I'm just going to put a B for bold, and then I'm going to close that. Right? So now text is within these bold tags. And then let me go ahead and render it. Okay, press play, and we see that the output is a little bolder. Okay. Later on, we'll see some more tags too, like you might have heard of italics or underline, right? You could totally do that here too, right? So this is going to look hard to read. I'm going to do another one. Right? I'm going to wrap this whole thing in underline. Right? I think underline is represented with a U, so /U. So now text is going to have both of those tags. So let me see. There it is. Yeah, it's underlined. Right, where we're kind of combining two things. So uh, once again, it might be easier to read if you put these on multiple lines. It's pretty much whatever your preference is. Let me see what it looks like if I did that. So boom, boom. Yeah, I guess it's whatever your preference is, but a lot of HTML sites will use this style, as you saw in the very beginning of class. But I'm gonna remove this underline tag. We'll talk about this later. Okay. Cool. Any questions about this so far? All right. Cool stuff, right? It's gonna get cooler. Trust me. We're gonna do some more real life examples in a bit. Okay. As we saw last week, we used f strings, and we also use another way of formatting. It's called the format function. So we can actually do this in another style. I actually don't really prefer this style, but I'll show people what I mean. So let me do the same exact behavior, but use something called a format function. This is stuff we saw last week. So let me go ahead and get these variables ready. And we had a my HTML, or actually I'm going to call it template instead, just to be consistent with this. So I'm going to set template equal to just pretty much the same thing. All right, so let me grab this. I'm going to set it to the same thing, but it's not going to be an f string. So there's no f here. All right, the reason why I'm not going to use an f string is because I'm going to use a function, a format function. And the way it works is it relies on empty holes. So I'm going to get rid of this right here, right? We only use this because of f strings. So I'm going to delete this and leave this empty. Get rid of this text, leave it empty. So now there are two holes in here. And you might remember from last week that there was a format function. Yeah, feel free to take a look at it. Template.format. Basically, since this string template has two holes, right, one here and one here, our format function is going to take two inputs, right, and those two inputs will propagate them into these holes. So the first input I'm going to go is color, and the next one is text. All right, so this is literally doing the same thing as above. Right, I just prefer this above because it's easier to read, and I think it's less steps. So yeah, this is the same thing. It's interpolating colors into here. Okay, so this does return a string. So you might want to convert the string into an HTML object. Right? So HTML object right here, parentheses, and then we can go ahead and put this object into the display function, which will render it. Okay, so let's play it. Yeah, see, it's just the same thing. Okay, so yeah, just take a look at these two. They're the same. If anything, this first one is a little more preferable. Just because this is a more modern style. This is older style, like Python 2 point something. We're on Python 3 point something now. Okay. So the cool thing about the format is we can just change things easily. Like if I were to copy and paste this and just change these inputs, right? Like Like let's say the first input, I'm just going to hard code like a blue here. And then for the text, I'm just going to hard code I am blue. All right, see, we can just reuse the template. So that's one use case you could do. Okay. Okay, any questions about this so far? Okay. All we did so far is just talk about a couple tags. Let's see some more. Hold up, my notebook is glitching. Hold on, I'm gonna refresh my browser. Let me save this first, actually. Control S. Let me refresh. Okay. Okay, we've seen some headers. This is another header, H3. Right, the number represents its layer. So layer 3 means that it's a little smaller. So if I were to run, whoops, I pressed print screen on accident. If I were to play this, it says my first paragraph, right? So my heading, this is the title, and then my first paragraph. Okay. Cool. Yeah, more on headings. I already talked about this. This is really the size of the title. I wouldn't really think of it as a size, though. I would think of it as sections within sections. So you can imagine like a textbook, right? Like imagine your math textbook, chapter 1. Right. So here, let me rewrite all of this so people see what I mean. Okay, I'm going to make a new cell here and just do another example. So my HTML. This is kind of how I designed the Canvas page as well. So I pretty much designed it as some headings, right? Like imagine here. Let's just say your math textbook. Right, let's just say your math textbook has a chapter 1. Right, so this is going to be a big title. Right, so this is chapter 1. Let me go ahead and render this real quick. It's a good idea to test frequently. Display. Okay. Okay, cool. Yeah, we got chapter 1. And typically there are subsections within it. Like there might be chapter 1.1, right? So this would be an H2. So H2. I haven't seen a math textbook in a while, so I don't really know how they name their sections. But you can think of it as like maybe, oops, this should be H2, my bad. I think it was a maybe section, say section 1.1. Yeah, I think this is how they name it. All right, so section 1.1, and then there might be a section 1.2. So let me close this. Section 1.2. Then let me just do one more. H2. All right, notice how I'm using H2 for all of these. Section 1.3. Okay, let me just render this. Cool, yeah, so you see a big title and then 3 subsections in here. Right? And you can kind of imagine that in the next chapter, right, it's going to be a big heading. Big heading, right? H1 for a big heading. And it's going to be chapter 2, and these will be 2 as well. So let me go ahead and render this. And yeah, you might not see it, but they're different sizes, right? So hopefully people are kind of seeing what these are. The reason why these are useful is because usually in between there's some text. So I'll talk about this in just a bit, but you can imagine how chapter 1 is going to say something like imagine a paragraph here. So imagine there's a paragraph. I'll talk about this later. There's a P tag. This represents a paragraph. So I'll say like, welcome to chapter 1. Okay, so that's just a paragraph there. And then inside of section 1.2, maybe there's another paragraph that says this section, I'll just say section introduces something, dot, dot, dot. And then, yeah, let me just press play. I'm going to leave this incomplete. Okay, so, but yeah, people kind of seeing how some websites are organized. All right, this is kind of how I did our Canvas webpage. So if you look at our Canvas webpage over here, I have a large header. I have a large header, and then in between there's some other headers. Like here's another large header, and then within it there are some small headers. Right, these are subsections. And here's another large section. Right, grading is a large, and within it there are some more subsections. Right, and this in particular is projects, exams, and then textbook, and another header, then a paragraph. You can look at the source code if you want. You can. It's going to look very familiar. So I'm going to look at the page source, and okay, it is hard to read, but you'll see somewhere down here. Let's see. I'm trying to look for a header tag. Here, you know what? It might be easier to use the inspect element instead. This way I don't scroll through all of this. Let me see. Yeah. So see here, H2. So there are some attributes inside of here. You don't have to worry about it, but all you got to realize is I'm using an H2, right? Meaning it's like a subsection, and within it, it's a grading, right? So grading is a big section, and then a strong. That this is just a tag. It's like bold, right? It's just saying make the text bold. So this line right here is rendering just this piece of text right here. It looks like a complicated way of doing something, but it is not. It gives us so much control over making things formatted. Okay, hopefully that makes sense what a header is. Okay, we saw the bold one before. Basically, bold, you use the B tag. There's a couple other ones too, italics and underlined. So we'll see right here, italic, bold, and underlined. Okay, cool. You know what? Let's take this a little slow. I think we should stop here and visit the lab. I don't want to introduce folks to too many things because then you might get overwhelmed. So I'm going to stop at hyperlinks. We should have enough to get a few problems done in the lab. Let me take a look real quick. Let me take a look at the lab. So lab 9. Okay, don't forget to run this. Oh, you know what? I forgot to put one more line in here. If folks don't mind importing the library, you can pretty much copy and paste the line at the top of the lesson. So let me go to the top of the lesson and copy this line right here. From IPython, import HTML. So I'm going to copy this and paste it into the top of the lab, just because I forgot to include it. Okay. There's a chance you might have to modify this, because it looks like I can't type in here. If you can't type in the code blocks, you might have to unlock it. So you can unlock it by going top right, common tools, and then click on editable right here. Cool, that should make us able to type. Okay, Cool, so I just added the import statement. Okay, so make sure you run this. You should be able to get a couple done. Let me see, number one you can get done. Number two, you can too. Number three, yeah, just three of them. Oh yeah, can folks go ahead and try to get those done? One, two, and three, all the way to heading. You don't have to worry about unordered list. We'll talk about this later. But yeah, this is a good chance to kind of absorb and see what's going on. Okay, I'm gonna put up a 10-minute timer for folks in Zoom and in person. Feel free to let me know if anything weird is happening. 10-minute timer. Okay, we're back from intermission. Thank you all for folks who attempted it. Okay, so yeah, we have enough to get a few of them done. One, two, and three. The first one is asking us to make something bold. So you can do this in a few different styles. I would declare a string. So I'm gonna declare a string variable called myHTML. I'm gonna set it equal to a multi-line string. It doesn't have to be a multi-line string. I'm just gonna get used to this because in the future we're gonna do larger HTML code. So I'm gonna use this. Okay, and then it's gonna have to say I'm really serious, right? So this is the body of it. Okay, and there we go. There's our HTML string. Right, if anything, we can go ahead and test it. Right, it's not gonna work yet. It's because we didn't bold it. But let's find out what the feedback says. So I'm converting the string into an HTML object, and then now I'm gonna render it. Okay, cool. So it renders like this, just a fancy print statement. And then, oops, I gotta scroll up. It says attention needed. I don't see a bold tag. So yeah, let me go ahead and put in the bold tag. Okay. So B, and then the ending tag, /B. Okay, there we go. Cool, so let me test it. All tests pass, looking good. Okay, italics. It's the same thing. Same thing. We're just gonna use a different tag. Okay. So let me set it up. I, and then the closing tag, /I. And then the body of it, are you for real? All right, so let me go ahead and run it. So press play, press play. Attention needed. You should call the display function. Whoops, I forgot to render it. But yeah, we did create it. We just never displayed it. HTML, and then go ahead and display it. Okay, there we go. Now it's displaying. We're going to press play, play. All tests pass. Cool. Finally, this third one. This is asking us to make a title, right? That's level 1. So this is one of the larger headings. Okay, let me get it ready. HTML equal to a multi-line string. Okay, and then I'm going to set it up. H1, H1, H1. There we go. And keep it on the same line because it doesn't matter too much. My title is, and I think there's a lot of room for freedom here. So you can print whatever you want. Like, let me just put something here. Let me see if this works. Something. I think as long as you use this H1, you should be fine. Let's see. Oh, display. I keep forgetting to call it display function. Bad. So let me convert it HTML. HTML. And go ahead and display it. Okay. Cool. All tests pass. All right, that was number 3. Okay, these next ones we don't know how to do yet. Unordered list. These are a fancy way of saying bullet points. And then one more, a couple more. A table, but we'll see how to do this in a bit. A hyperlink, this is making something clickable. We'll cover that in a bit. And then part 2, folks should try this out at home. But yeah, let's talk about this later. Okay, let's jump into the rest of the lesson. And that should allow us to get the rest of the lab done. Okay, so going back to the lesson. We ended off over here in the, where do we leave off at? Over here, the text decoration. This is where we got introduced to italic, bold, and underline. Okay, so just taking a step back, it can get really overwhelming with HTML. There's so many things. Let me just look at the documentation real quick. I think we're gonna go ahead and do some other cool things. This way people don't get too bored. But let's see. What other cool stuff can we do? Elements. Okay. Let me look at the tags. HTML tags. Okay, let me see. I just want to see all the tags. Okay, never mind. I'm not going to pull it up. I feel like it's going to be information overload. But yeah, let's bring it together in the end. So let's talk about hyperlinks. This is a fancy way of saying make a text clickable. So we'll see here, if I run this, it's going to render a text that says CIS-15. So I'll press play, and this is clickable, right? This is a hyperlink. When I click it, it's going to bring me to a website. In particular, there is an attribute here that will bring us there. So let me click this. This is my coworker's website, by the way. So I just clicked it, and here it is. Right. This is not my website. This is someone named Mike Matera. He's the author of this course, actually. He helped write a lot of this material. So yeah, folks can thank Mike Matera for a lot of this content. The labs, the lesson. You can thank him for the server that's hosted for us, right? This Jupyter server. Yeah, thanks. Thank you, Mike. Cool. Yeah, this is in 2017. By the way, here's me. Here's me in the background. I used to be a student here in the robotics club. Here is Mike right here. Okay. Cool, cool. Let's talk about hyperlinks then. You know, let's go ahead and create our own. So let me just make another cell, just so folks can kind of see how it's built, right? Because it might not help just staring at code, right? Let's go ahead and build it from scratch. Okay. Let me just make another HTML. Set up a multi-line string. Maybe I guess I'll do the same thing, but have it linked to our Canvas page. So let me start simple. Let me just put the plain text first. So I'm going to render a text that says CIS-15. Okay, and let me go ahead and display it real quick. Once again, it's a really good idea to test frequently. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to catch errors. Okay, cool. No errors here. There you go. I displayed CIS-15. Okay, now I'm going to wrap this in a tag. Right, I'm going to wrap it in something called an A tag. So A, and then I'm going to go ahead and end it with the ending tag A. Okay, cool. So what does the A tag do? You know what? I'm actually not sure what it stands for. I know what it does. I'm not sure what it stands for. Let me look at the documentation real quick. So I think at the very top of the notebook, there's some documentation. HTML elements. Oh, I already have that open. My bad. So I just opened it and here it is. All right, what does an A tag do? Let's see. Is it an attribute? No, there it is. Okay, so the A tag defines a hyperlink. Uh, and then within the A tag, we can define some attributes. Our attributes are like additional features that we're going to put. So here inside of this opening tag, I'm going to give it a attribute. I'll call it href. Right? I'm pretty much describing what's going to happen down here. Href is short for hyperreference. I think that's what it stands for. And then I'm going to set it equal to some string. Right? Not a Python string, by the way. This is an HTML string. So whatever is going to be inside of these double quotes is going to represent where we're going to navigate to. So if I were to put something like our website is right here. I'm just going to copy and paste. Right, this is our Canvas homepage. So let's play it. Okay, I press play, and there it is. Right, if I click on this, it's going to bring us to here. Boom, our website. Pretty cool, right? We just wrote a hyperlink. Okay, so back to the notebook. People cool with this so far? Okay. Hyperlinks don't have to bring you to another website. It's possible to navigate you around the same page as well. If you took a look at our Canvas webpage, you might notice a table of contents here. These links, these are hyperlinks. They don't really bring you to another website. It actually just navigates you around on the same exact page. All right, like if I click on contact info, it's going to bring me to the very bottom. So boom, there it is, bottom. Right, and there's another hyperlink on the bottom. Right, this goes to the very top. Right, so there we go, we're at the very top. Okay, I do want to stress we are on the same web page, so yeah, you can pretty much click around. Okay, so if you did want to look at how these hyperlinks are built, you could just right-click it and then you could inspect it. Inspecting will let you kind of narrow in on it. Right, so I'm going to narrow in. So this is an unordered list. Right, an unordered list is a fancy way of saying bullet points. And then inside of it, there are list items. I'm not sure if folks can read this, but let me zoom in a bit. Here, let me zoom in a bunch. But okay, so you see this? You see a schedule right here? If folks can read this, it's represented right here where I highlighted right here. You see how it says href, right? Hyper, and then it's pointing to a location on the page, right? It's not another website. Okay, so yeah, I was just showing an application. Okay, cool. Any questions about hyperlinks so far? Okay. Cool. Hope that makes sense. Okay. Taking a step back, we're actually hard coding data, by the way. In a future assignment, we'll be using F strings to build HTML. So this thing I highlighted, this is hard coded, and in the future, we'll find ourselves replacing this with something else. Right? You can imagine that we're going to use a F string. Right? Imagine we're using an F string, and then instead of hard coding it, there's going to be something in here as an F string. Right? So this is going to be some link that was downloaded. All right, so we'll see that later, but we're going to hard code things for now. Okay, let's move on. Okay, lists. Yeah, there's a couple types of lists that we'll see. One is called an ordered list. Right? Ordered lists have numbers to the left of it, and then there are unordered lists, which are things to here. I'll just put so this is a ordered list. I just press play, and then this is a unordered list. So basically how this reads, this HTML on the ordered list, these outer tags, outer ordered list, right? Meaning that all the list items in here will be numbered. So this li, this stands for list item. Right? You don't have to put a 1, right? You don't have to type in 1. It's the HTML will do it for us. So it's going to label this 1, label this 2, right? These stand for list items. Okay, and then unordered list, this is UL. The behavior for this is it's not going to number them, right? Every list item will just have the same prefix. In this case, the default prefix is a period. It is possible to change this period. You pretty much want to change an attribute. Right? So if you want to change an attribute here, you can modify this. Oh, it looks like I can't modify these cells. I think I did a keyboard shortcut on accident that locks them. So let me go ahead and unlock these cells. Make this editable. Make this editable. Okay, cool. So if you did want to modify them, yeah, there it is. Okay, any questions about lists items so far? Okay, and just to show an application of it, the website, our Canvas homepage, uses unordered list, right? The table of contents, this is an unordered list, and I can prove it. So inspect. I know this is hard to read for folks on the Zoom. Hopefully the recording is higher quality, but here it is. So basically I'm hovering over something called an unordered list. Let me see, right here. Yeah, I'm hovering over unordered list, and I can go ahead and expand it, and it'll show me all these single list items. So list item 1, list item 2, 3. Right here, you know, let me just pull up the raw HTML, just because this might be hard to read. So view page source. So this is the raw HTML. There's a lot you can learn here. So let me find the table of contents real quick. The table of contents is right here. So let me go ahead and highlight it. So you see the UL, right? UL stands for unordered list. And here's the closing tag. Right? And then between it are list items. All right, you see this list item? Right? And then between the list items, I used a tag that allows us to make it clickable. Right? So this text becomes clickable. This one becomes clickable too. Right? It just brings us to another area on the website. So yeah, are people kind of getting a sense on how websites can look on the inside? Pretty cool stuff, right? It gives you so much control. You can do so many things. You can insert invisible text too, right? Like you can insert invisible text in between things, meaning that it's like invisible ink, right? You can do that stuff. So yeah, lots of cool stuff you can do. Okay, any questions about bullet point stuff? Okay, moving on, we can do tables as well. So tables is, you can think of it as like a two-dimensional way of organizing things. This is probably going to be one of the most important parts of this lesson, because the next assignment will ask us to write a table in HTML. So here, let me write a table from scratch. Once again, just because if I press play here, right, you might not get much out of it. Let me build it from scratch so people kind of see what's going on. Right, so this is a table, right? It's got 4 rows. And then in each row, there are 2 data elements. So let me make one from scratch so people see what's going on. Maybe let's say I'm representing a table that has people's data, right? Like maybe like, let me think real quick. Okay, imagine if I'm storing data where the first column represents someone's name and then the second column represents their age. All right, let's keep it simple for now. So name and age. So check this out. I'm going to make a string called myHTML is equal to a blank multi-line string. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and create a table. So a table here and then an ending. Right, we got to close. Most tags in HTML have a pair that ends it. Right, so this is the pair right here. Okay, and here's the part where things might look a little tricky because it's going to get a little long here. So inside the table, I'm gonna, you know what? I'm actually gonna render this right now. Let me go ahead and render it. So my HTML, and then go ahead and display this. Okay, let me press play. Okay, there we go. There's a table. It's invisible. There is a table being rendered. It's just that the table is size 0. So let's go ahead and populate it. I'm gonna add in a row, right? A single row. So one way we can do that is with a tag called tr. So tr stands for table row, and tr right here. All right, so there you go. There's one row. I will press play here, and we're not going to see anything yet. Right, there actually is a row there, but that row is size 0. So let's go ahead and fill in that row. All right, so between these tags, I'm going to put in some data elements. Like let me put in some data. Like let's just say Alice. So I'm going to insert another tag here. Yeah, it's going to look tricky. I'm going to insert another tag, another one. This one I'm going to call it table data. So TD. All right, TD. TD stands for table data. It represents everything that's within the cell. Right. So whatever I type between these tags is going to go inside the cell. All right. Here you'll see what I mean. So I'll put Alice here. I press Alice. Let me press play. Okay, there we go. Right, we have Alice in a single cell, and then let me add in another table data element. All right, so let me add in another pair data. So TD and TD, and between these two tags, let me just put some data. Like let's say her age is 29 or something. Right? It doesn't matter. So press play, and people kind of see what happened. Right? It looks like a fancy print statement, but this is a row with 2 data elements. Okay, so yes, people are kind of seeing. Okay. I see it's hard to visualize. Okay, hopefully people are cool with this. You can format this however you want. I'm just sticking with a standard. That this is how most people represent the HTML. If you want to, you could represent it like this. It might make things look easier to read. Right. This might look easier to read. It's totally up to you. Okay, let me press play, and there we go. Right, same thing. Okay, let me add in another row. Right, like down here below the first row, I want to add another table row. So tr and tr. Okay, so I'm just adding another 2 data elements. Right, like let me just set it up. So I'm going to add 2 cells. TD, TD, TD. Cool. So whatever we put between these table data is going to go in that cell. So here I'm going to put Bob, and let's say Bob is age like 50. It doesn't matter. Okay, let's press play. So okay, hold up. Every time I press play, it kind of like scrolls me. Super annoying. I like lose my spot. Feel bad for the people following along. Anyways, there are 2 rows now, right? This first row represents here, right? This one, and then this second row represents Bob and 50. Right, so yeah, hopefully people kind of see what's going on, right? TR stands for table row, and TD stands for table data. Right, a fancy way of saying cell. Okay, it might be useful to give these columns a title, right? Like maybe you want to put a heading and describe which each column does. Like this first column represents the name, and the second column represents the age. So it might be useful to add another row at the top. Right, so at the very top here, I'm going to add in a row. Right, and this is going to look a little different actually. So I'm setting up a pair. I'm going to use something called TH. Right, TH is short for table header. It's just a fancy way of saying make it bold, make it format it like a title. That's pretty much what table header is saying. So cool, yeah. So this is just another row. It's just gonna look different. Okay, and then inside of it, I'm gonna add 2 cells. So TD, TD, and let me add another one. Wait, I think I got it wrong actually. Let me look at an example down here. Oh, my bad. I had it reversed. So I didn't mean to put TH here. It's still a normal row. So this should be TR. Yeah, so go ahead and change that to TR. Basically, I meant the cells. So the cells will use something called table header. Okay. So TH. And yeah, if folks want to look at it, the primary documentation, you can play around with it. Okay, so this is like a name. So name, and then the second column is age. All right, so let me press play. Play, and it scrolls me down. Okay, so yeah, all we did right here was add a row. And within that row is table header, right? Table header just formats the data a little differently, right? It just makes it it just makes it bold, and in some applications it's gonna center it. So just formatting it. Okay, people cool with this so far. That's a table. How a table is built. That's how this website was built right here. You see these tables? These are all tables that can be written in HTML. I actually didn't use raw HTML to make these tables. I used the built-in canvas tool. But the built-in canvas tool in the background is generating a table that looks like this. Right? So when I edit using canvas tool, it's going to generate this for me. Okay, I am able to edit this in raw HTML, by the way. So if I wanted to have extra control, I could modify it. Right. For example, this calendar. I use HTML to embed it. Anyways, any questions about this table so far? Okay. Okay. I guess we could have maybe a bit of fun with this. We're going to talk about images in just a bit. So just a sneak peek into images. Let me add in a third column. Right, let's pretend that the third column is their profile picture. So let me make another header here. I'll call this like profile pic. Okay. So for now, if I render it, we'll see a new column, but it's going to be empty. Right, so you see that? So I just added profile pic, but it's empty for these next ones, right? Hopefully that makes sense because these rows only have 2 table data elements. So if you want, you could make another table data. Right, so table data, I'm gonna leave it empty for now, just so I can make sure everything's running fine. TD. Oops, made a mistake right here. TD. Okay, some empty cells. I just added 2 empty cells. Let's see what it looks like. Okay, cool. So now we see there's empty cells. If you wanted to, you could put a picture in here. Let's see. I need to think of a good placeholder picture. I'm just gonna use an emoji, a picture of an emoji. Like I'm gonna Google up an emoji picture. So let's see. What's a good profile picture I could use? Let's see. Hold up. I feel like I might get copywritten. Yeah, hold on. I need to think about this. I don't want to get that. Basically, I'm trying to think of a picture that I could paste into here. Let's see. You know what? I'm just gonna use like a default picture. Like, let me Google up. Have people here used Facebook before? Default Facebook profile pic. Have people seen this before? So I guess I'll just use this. Let me get the URL for this, the address. All right, let's pretend that this is Alice's picture. Oh, this is kind of a long URL. Why is it so long? It's probably because there's some trackers in here. Let me see. Okay. Yeah, you know what? I'm going to use this whole URL. Kind of long though. Okay, so I just copied this URL. It's possible to put it inside of this cell right here. So that's going to be in here, right? And this is a sneak peek. There is a tag called image, right? Image. This is one of the special tags that don't have an ending one. And how it works is it's an attribute inside of the tag. So let me scroll down. I forget the syntax. Image source equal to that. Okay. So the way how the attribute works is you would say source is equal to some HTML string. And in this case, it's going to be the website. So let me paste that super long URL. Damn, that's long. Okay. Okay, and then press play. And yeah, you see how the third one now has the profile picture. All right, Bob's is empty because we never did anything for it. Okay, so yeah, hopefully people kind of seeing how this might work. Okay, I'm gonna remove this image actually. Let me remove the third column. That was just a sneak peek. Okay, so yeah, some good old tables. All right. Cool. Oh yeah, yeah. So this is the same thing, right? An image doesn't have a closing tag. It's just one of those special ones. And how you specify it is within this URL here. So let me press play here, and that's going to print out the Python logo. Pretty cool stuff, right? Okay, this is just the website. Right, you could go to the website if you want. It's pretty much going to bring us to here. This is Python logo. Okay. But I got too many tabs open. Let me quit all of these. Control W. Okay, cool. Back to one tab. Yeah. Any questions about images? All right, here's something cool. You don't have to know this for this class. It's just some cool stuff you can do. This image it doesn't have infinite resolution, meaning that if you were to zoom in, you're going to see pixelation at some point. Okay, I actually can't zoom in anymore, but if you were to download this image, you would see pixelation if you zoomed in a bunch. Now, that's because the way the image is stored. One thing I learned recently is that the Cabrillo College logo it has infinite resolution. So it's right here. So cabrillo.edu. Right, you see this logo on the top left. This is not a JPEG. All right, so a JPEG is like an image file. It's not a JPEG, nor is it text. Right? See, if it was text, I'd be able to highlight it, but I can't. And it's not a JPEG because I'm not able to open image or something. Right? I'm not able to say download image. Right? I might be able to download these images down here, like this image. Let me see. Yeah, see, I can right-click this and then download this image, but not the logo here. So once again, this is off the topic of the class. You don't have to know this, but this logo is stored in a format called SVG, which stands for Scalable Vector Graphics. So this is not JPEG. Right? So earlier I was talking about JPEG, JPG. Right? This is a type of file that photos use. But SVG, that's what Cabrillo uses. And you can actually look at the SVG here. So let me inspect the element. Right, so let me inspect the element right here. And here it is. It's actually kind of hard to read, but I'm highlighting the HTML code that represents this logo. So it's gonna look a little different. So let me copy and paste this. Let me copy. Okay, I just copied this whole thing right here, but the representation, the HTML representation. Let me make another cell. So here's what I copied over. HTML is equal to some multi-line string. So I pretty much copied over this. Paste. Okay, it's really large. It's a super long line. But I pretty much just copy and pasted a single block there. It's an SVG, which is a fancy way of saying image with infinite resolution. This is not the location of the Cabrillo College logo. Right? It's not. I'm actually not sure what this XMLNS stands for. I'm sure we could find that out by Googling it. But yeah, this is not the source of the Cabrillo College logo. It actually brings us to like another source, right? So I just copied it in here. It just brings me to a different website. So I'm not sure what that is. It might be like citing sources or something. But the Cabrillo College logo is actually represented with all of these numbers. So let me make this look easier to read because this is kind of hard to read. So yeah, it's represented by all these numbers. There's a path. You can think of a path as defining a bunch of coordinates. So imagine a graph, and you're tracing the graph to make the Cabrillo College logo. So these are all coordinates, and it is pretty long. So let me make it easier to read. Actually, there are some line breaks that I need. Let me Control F this. Control F. Let me look for something called path. Okay. Path. What else? Another path. Okay. I'm just inserting some new lines so it looks easier to read. Okay. because when I copied and pasted from the Cabrillo website, it wasn't formatted. Okay, boom, and boom. Okay, and finally, this should make it look easier to read. Boom, boom, and boom. Okay, there you go. People kind of seeing what's happening here. So I haven't rendered it yet, but just looking at it, the outer layer is an SVG, right? This stands for Scalable Vector Graphics. It's a fancy way of saying image. And then within it, we have 3 different paths. Right? A path, think of it like a turtle. Oh yeah, that's actually a good way. Right? Think of it as a turtle making a path. In this case, these numbers represent where the turtle is going. Right? They're numbers, represents where it's going. So let me go ahead and render this. It's gonna be some pretty cool stuff. So my HTML. And then let me display it. Okay, cool. So I'm gonna render this HTML string. And then, oops, okay, this keeps, I need to zoom out. Okay, so I just press display, and then we see a piece of the logo. All right, the Cabrillo Colors logo is here, by the way. It's just white. So if you want to see it, one way you can do is you can just change some attribute here and make it black, or you can just change the theme of the Jupyter Lab. So you can go to settings, theme, and then make it dark. And then there we go. All right, there's Cabrillo College. This is not a JPEG. Right? JPEG is a image format. This actually has infinite resolution. If you were to zoom in, okay, I ran out of zoom space, but yeah, it has infinite resolution. You can zoom in all the way and I don't believe you'll see any pixels. Right? The reason why is because these coordinates represent a path, like a turtle path. So yeah, it's some pretty interesting stuff to me. And I think this would be interesting to graphic designers. Okay, cool. Any questions about this so far? Once again, you don't have to know about SVGs. If anything, you should probably know about an image, like how to paste a PNG. This is a PNG, not a JPEG. PNG is another photo extension. Yeah, so all you need to know is how to do this right here. Okay, no questions? All right, let me change this back to normal theme. All right. Cool, a couple more sections. Okay. Paragraphs. Yeah, paragraphs. Final couple ones. P is short for a paragraph. This lets us write things. So let me just play this. Right, these are really short paragraphs. But basically, the way HTML renders paragraphs is by adding an extra new line in between. Like you see how line 1, line 2, right? There's an extra space in between. So if I were to make this like a really long paragraph, like here, let me copy and paste a longer paragraph. Have people heard of this right here, lorem? It's like some nonsense that you can copy and paste. I'm just going to copy and paste some nonsense just so you see what's going on. So let me generate like 3 paragraphs. Okay, so I could get this first paragraph and then paste it into here. Oh, I can't even edit this cell. Okay, let me change it to editable. Okay, there we go. Change it to editable. So I want to change this very first. Okay, there it is, copy and pasted. And let me get the second one, second paragraph. Okay, boom. Go to beginning. Wait, that's the same one. Okay, well, it doesn't matter if it's the same one, as long as people kind of see what's going on. The default behavior of these paragraphs is, yeah, there it is, right? So paragraph 1, paragraph 2, paragraph 3. If you didn't want them to be having this extra vertical white space, you could use a line break. Line breaks look a little different. It's a BR and then forward slash. Basically, it's not a paragraph. It's they're right next to each other. Okay, this will be useful stuff later. You're going to be using line breaks, like in the future assignment. In a future assignment, you'll see yourself adding multiple things in a table cell, right? Say this cell, for example. What if Alice were to have multiple aliases, or Bob, right? Like let's say Bob had another name. Like let's say his name was also Robert. Well, you can add things in this cell, right? Like you can do a line break, right? So the line break that we just saw at the bottom of the notebook is BR, and then I think this. Hold on, I gotta look at it. Which way does the slash go? Yeah, it goes like this, forward slash at the end. So if Bob had a second name, you can just add a line break, and then maybe give another name, Robert, right? Let's see that's his name. So press play, and you see how two elements are in one cell, right? This is one cell. It's not two, and that's because here, right? We have one cell, but inside the cell there's a line break. So yeah, you're gonna end up using something like this in the future. So you could put multiple things in here. Right? Like let me do a line break, and then put like Bobby, and press enter. And, yeah, see now Bob has 3 names. This is a single cell. Okay. Cool. Any questions about this so far? All right. Yeah, some cool stuff. Let me think real quick. Let me think. I feel like I skipped over something awesome. Hmm. Yeah, I think that should be it actually. Uh, if folks want to go ahead and give it a try on the lab, I'm gonna end class 15 minutes early. So folks can go ahead and try this out at home. And if you're not sure how to do it, I'm gonna go over it on Thursday. Basically, all you have to do now is the rest of the lab. Number 4, make an unordered list. Okay. And then number 5, make a table. All right, so go ahead and give those a try. Make a link. And then part 2 is a tiny bit harder. But part 2 is actually probably the most important part because it's going to go away from hard coding. Basically, part 2 is going to be writing F strings and then interpolating variables into it. And then we're going to be displaying those F strings as HTML. Right, so yeah, part 2, go ahead and give that a try. It might seem confusing at first, but I will go over it on Thursday. Please try it out yourself, though. This is going to be some useful stuff for the next assignment. Okay. Okay. Let's end right here, and let me do some concluding thoughts. So let me go to the syllabus real quick. Okay. Syllabus right here. I just created a link for it. Okay, syllabus, let's see. On Thursday, it's probably going to be a really short day. we're likely going to cover the lab, right, lab 9, and then give some hints on the next programming project. Right, this next programming project, I just released it earlier. It's really the same as a previous, but you're going to be formatting things into a table. Okay, so that's pretty much that. Next week, it's going to feel a little dense. So the material is going to pick up a lot. Next week, we only have one week to cover something called functions. This is arguably one of the more important parts because it's actually going to put everything together. And functions is just so useful, but there's just so much to talk about in functions. So next week, I'm expecting some 2-hour long videos, right? 2 different 2-hour long videos. That's pretty much what I'm expecting. But yeah, we'll see. We'll see how it goes. Okay, thank you all for coming, and have a great day. Okay, let me pause recording, and then I'll take some questions here.